Dax, Jake, Timothy and me. Chapter 1. As the shouting dimmed between us, I turned to Dax, narrowing my eyes. His sulking expression gave away more than he intended. "All right, spill. What's truly bothering you? And don't say it's Timothy. I know you better than that." Dax huffed, running a hand through his disheveled hair, avoiding my gaze. "I don't like him." "You've made that abundantly clear," I said, crossing my arms. "But why? You're not this bothered by Hayes, and he's my boyfriend. So, what is it about the kid that gets under your skin?" He fidgeted, finally throwing his hands up. "He acts like he owns everything, including you." I smirked. "He doesn't own me." "Come on, Dax, you're never jealous of Hayes." "What's the real reason?" "It's not jealousy," he muttered, turning his back to me as he sank onto the edge of the bed. He tugged off his shirt, exposing the tension in his shoulders. "Fine. You want honesty? It's Jake. It's always Jake." The unexpected name made my stomach drop. I moved closer and began massaging his shoulders, my thumbs pressing into the knots. "Jake's a sweetheart," I said softly, "but you're afraid of letting him in again after he hurt you that one time." "Yes," he whispered, his voice heavy with vulnerability. "And you're projecting all this onto Timothy because—" "What?" "He and I slept together once?" Dax sighed, his head dropping forward. "I don't know. Maybe. You're never like this, Dax. Not about Hayes, not about anyone else." "So why him?" "Because he's always around," he said, his voice low, tinged with frustration. "It feels like he's replacing me." "Replacing you?" I tilted my head. "Dax, we've lived together for years. Sometimes we didn't even see each other for a month. And now you're saying you missed me?" The air between us grew thick. I softened my touch, moving my hands in slow, deliberate circles across his back. His breathing evened out slightly, but I could still sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Have you ever wondered, if you and I, Dax," I whispered. "You and I. We're too different. It wouldn't have worked." "I know," he said quickly, almost defensively. "I don't want things to change. I just—" He hesitated, his voice dropping into a whisper. "Sometimes I want you all to myself." I stepped back slightly, letting my hands fall to my sides. "Oh, Dax." Before I could say more, his vulnerability morphed into a sly grin, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Maybe I just want your attention," he muttered. "You're only giving it to him." I paused, letting his words hang in the air before giving him a sly smile. "So that's what it's about." I gestured toward the bed. "Okay, come up here." "Bum up." As he moves onto the bed, I head to the dresser, selecting a small object from the shelf before returning to him. Slowly, I pull down his pants, revealing the vulnerable curve of his back. Sucking lightly on my thumb, I press it gently against his entrance, rubbing in slow, deliberate circles. He lets out a soft, involuntary moan, his body responding to the sensation. I hold up the object, lifting it to my lips, my gaze locked on him as I lick and suck it, coating it thoroughly. His breathing deepens, anticipation thick in the air. With care, I press the tip against him, easing it in. It's ridged, so it slides in with two satisfying pops, his body tensing and then relaxing as it settles into place. Pulling his pants back up, I give him a playful grin. "Now, give me your phone," I say casually. His brow furrows slightly, but he hands it over. I set it to create a hotspot for the plug, holding up my own phone to demonstrate. "As long as it has a good connection, I can control it from here." I tap the screen, making it vibrate softly. His breath hitches, another low moan escaping his lips, but then I stop the vibration entirely, leaving him hanging. "I've got an interview today," I murmur, my voice laced with teasing amusement. "Maybe I'll turn it on just before I head in and leave it on the whole hour. You know, just to show you I'm thinking of you." Or. I trail off, letting the possibilities linger. He groans softly, still half lying on the bed. "You're something else entirely," he murmurs. his voice thick with admiration and resignation. Before I can reply, Eric and Tim's voices carry up from downstairs, shouting that we need to go. I glance mischievously at Dax, my lips curving into a wicked smile. Keep it in. As we headed down, the tension eased, though I could still feel Dax's eyes on me, watching, calculating. By the time we reached the kitchen, Timothy was leaning casually against the counter, grinning like he hadn't a care in the world. "You ready?" Timothy asked, his voice dripping with confidence. I turned to Eric. "What are you and Dax doing after meeting the students today? Will you be back in time for dinner, or should I start without you?" Eric glanced at the clock. "You'll be back before us, so if you don't mind starting it, that'd be great." "Got it," I said, already making mental notes about the evening. Chapter 2. Just before the interview with Timothy, I casually reached for my phone, already scheming. I turned the plug on and tucked the device back into my pocket, my face completely neutral. Tim, oblivious, was scrolling through his notes for the questions we might be asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You ready for this?" he asked, flashing me a small, encouraging smile. "Always," I replied, returning the smile, though my mind was already half focused on what kind of chaos Dax was currently enduring across town. The interview kicked off smoothly, with Timothy and me seated on a sleek, minimalist set. The host introduced us and launched into the usual questions about the film, our characters, and our experiences working together. Timothy, ever the professional, spoke with eloquence, weaving in humor and thoughtfulness in equal measure. But just as I started answering a question about my favorite moment on set, my phone buzzed discreetly in my lap. Glancing down, I caught a message from Dax. "Dax, seriously? Stop. I'm talking to film students, and I'm about to lose it." Suppressing a laugh, I texted back swiftly, "Me, multitasking builds character." The host didn't seem to notice my momentary distraction, moving on to ask Tim about his upcoming projects. As he answered, my phone buzzed again. "Dax," Eric's side-eyeing me like I've lost my mind. "Turn it off." I relented, for now, and turned it off, slipping my phone back into my pocket as Tim wrapped up his response. "What about you?" Tim turned to me as the host directed the next question my way. I nodded, leaning forward slightly. "It's been an amazing experience. Working with Tim has been enlightening, to say the least." Timothy raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Enlightening? Should I be concerned about what you're implying?" The host laughed, clearly enjoying the banter. "I think we all want to hear this story now." "Let's just say," I replied, shooting Tim a teasing look, "he has a habit of outshining everyone else on set, whether he means to or not." Tim feigned offense, placing a hand dramatically over his heart. "Outshining? I think you're just making excuses for when I'll beat you in our next trivia showdown." "Bring it on, kid," I shot back, earning a laugh from the host. As the interview concluded, Tim and I exchanged smiles, and the host thanked us for coming. The energy was light and easy, but as we stepped off set and headed toward the car, Tim turned to me, his curiosity evident. "You seemed a bit distracted during the interview," he noted, his voice casual but probing. I shrugged, playing it off. "Just thinking about dinner." "What are you in the mood for?" Tim shook his head, clearly unconvinced but not pressing further. "Something simple. Pasta? Or tacos?" "Tacos," I decided, pulling my phone out and texting Eric to let me know when he and Dax were on the way back. Back home, Tim and I immediately got to work in the kitchen. He chopped vegetables with practiced ease while I prepped the meat and tortillas. "Did Eric say what time they'd be back?" Tim asked, glancing at me as he arranged the toppings on a plate. "Not yet," I replied, stirring the skillet. "But knowing Dax, he's probably holding them up somehow." Tim chuckled. "Probably debating movie trivia with the students instead of letting Eric wrap things up." My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the message from Eric. "Eric, we're heading back now. 10 minutes out." "Perfect timing," I said, turning the stove off and setting the table. As the minutes ticked by, I couldn't resist one last act of mischief. With a sly smile, I pulled out my phone and turned the plug back on, setting it to a steady vibration. I could almost imagine Dax's reaction in the car, his jaw tightening as he struggled to maintain his composure. By the time they arrived, Dax stumbled out of the car, his face flushed. Eric, concerned, muttered something about him not feeling well and acting up all day. "I'll be fine," Dax grumbled, making a beeline for the bathroom. I watched him go, feigning innocence as I continued stirring the sauce for the tacos. "Long day?" Tim asked casually. "Something like that," Eric muttered, heading to the kitchen to unload the bags he had. The table was set, the warm aroma of tacos and spices filling the air. Tim and Eric were seated, Eric scrolling through his phone while Tim fiddled with a napkin. "I'll go check on Dax," I said casually, pushing back my chair. "Make sure he hasn't drowned in self-pity," Tim joked, eliciting a laugh from Eric. I smirked, shaking my head as I ascended the stairs. The faint sound of water running led me to the bathroom. I leaned casually against the door frame, taking in the scene. Dax was facing the mirror, his shirt discarded, his hands moving over his body and lowering his hand to his crotch. He noticed me almost immediately, his gaze meeting mine in the mirror. "You enjoying the view?" he asked, his voice low and teasing, though tinged with frustration. I raised an eyebrow, my expression impassive. "Dinner's getting cold." Dax turned to face me fully, crossing his arms. "You didn't answer the question." I tilted my head slightly, giving him an unimpressed once-over. "It's not about the view, Dax. It's about you not keeping us waiting." Without waiting for a response, I turned and headed back downstairs, my footsteps echoing softly against the wood. Dax joined us a few minutes later, looking much more composed. "Took you long enough," Eric said with a playful smirk. "Had to clean up," Dax replied smoothly, though I could see a flicker of irritation in his eyes as he glanced at me. We all dug into the food, the atmosphere light and comfortable. Tim and Eric launched into a debate about the best taco fillings, while I mostly listened, chiming in occasionally. Dax, as usual, found a way to steer the conversation toward himself, recounting a ridiculous anecdote from the preset of Starlight and Ash. Eric eventually turned on the TV, flipping through channels until he landed on a classic sci-fi film. Conversation flowed easily as we ate, discussing favorite movies, upcoming projects, and random bits of trivia. The sound of the front door opening drew our attention. Hayes stepped in, looking slightly disheveled but undeniably handsome in his work clothes. He loosened his tie as he greeted everyone, his deep voice filling the space. "Dinner's still warm," I said, gesturing to the table. "Perfect timing," he replied, his smile softening as his eyes met mine. Hayes ate quickly, occasionally glancing at the TV and contributing to the conversation. When he finished, everyone began retreating to their rooms. "Night, guys," Tim said, heading upstairs. Dax followed, grumbling about needing sleep, while Eric lingered for a moment to clean up. Hayes and I stayed behind in the kitchen, the quiet settling around us as the house grew still. He leaned against the counter, pulling me into his arms. "You stayed up for me," he murmured, his voice a mix of gratitude and affection. "Always," I replied, brushing my lips against his. We lingered there for a moment, kissing softly, his hands trailing along my back, my fingers curling into his shirt. The day's exhaustion melted away as we held each other, the bond between us palpable in the quiet intimacy. Eventually, we made our way to the bedroom, our hands roaming lazily over each other as we climbed into bed. Hayes pulled me close, his warmth a comforting anchor as we drifted into a peaceful sleep. Chapter 3. The morning light filters through the window as Timothy and I prepare to head out for what promises to be an exhausting day. He adjusts his jacket in the mirror, flashing me a cheeky grin. "Ready to conquer the world?" he asks, slinging his bag over his shoulder. I rolled my eyes, grabbing my phone. "Let's just survive the day first, shall we?" As we step out to the waiting car, the driver nods a polite greeting. Tim slides in first, patting the seat beside him. "You know," he says as the car pulls away, "if we play our cards right, one of those interviews will end early." We can squeeze in some downtime before the shoot. I laugh. You're always scheming. He shrugs, a playful smirk on his lips. It's called efficiency, thank you very much. The photo shoot is a whirlwind of flashes and hurried adjustments. Timothy is in his element, effortlessly charming the crew and hitting pose after pose like it's second nature. All right, your turn, he says, stepping aside and gesturing for me to take center stage. I step forward, throwing him a mock glare. Don't act like you're retiring. You're up next for the duo shots. As the photographer gives instructions, Tim leans in close, his voice low enough only for me to hear. Think they'll let us steal one of these outfits? This jacket has my name on it. You mean the one you're definitely not giving back? I reply, smirking as I strike a pose. He chuckles, his laughter drawing amused glances from the crew. The video shoot follows, a mix of scripted lines and candid interactions. Tim thrives on the candid segments, delivering off-the-cuff remarks that have everyone in stitches. Timothy, I say during one of the segments, turning to him, if you had to choose between always being late or never being able to laugh, which would it be? He gasps, clutching his chest like I've dealt a mortal blow. You're cruel. Obviously, I'd rather be late. Can you imagine a world where I couldn't laugh at your jokes? Good answer, I reply, grinning. By the time we reach the interviews, exhaustion is starting to creep in, but Tim's energy is as relentless as ever. During the first interview, he seamlessly transitions between thoughtful answers and his trademark humor. When asked about working together, he nudges me with his elbow. She's the brains, I'm just here to make her look good, he says, earning a laugh from the host. The second interview is a bit more formal, but Tim still manages to sneak in a few quips. As we leave the studio, he throws an arm around my shoulders. Long day, huh? I nod, stifling a yawn. And it's not even over yet. He grins. Bet you miss me when we're back home and I crash in my room. I'll let you believe that, I reply, smirking as we climb into the car. We arrive home just as midnight strikes, stepping into the quiet house. The sound of the front door closing draws Hayes downstairs, his tie already loosened. You two look like you've been through a war, he remarks, pulling me into a brief hug. It wasn't that bad, I reply, though my tired smile says otherwise. Tim stretches, his yawn exaggerated. All right, I'm calling it a night. Don't miss me too much. Good night, Tim, I say as he trudges upstairs. Hayes and I follow, our steps slow and heavy. When we enter our bedroom, the sight of Dax sprawled on the bed stops us in our tracks. Hayes raises an eyebrow, his voice low. Did Dax and Jake have another fight? I shake my head, equally puzzled. No idea. But let's not wake him. There's plenty of space, let's just squeeze in and get some sleep. He sighs, running a hand through his hair. Fine. But this better not become a habit. We carefully climb into bed, doing our best not to disturb Dax. As Hayes settles in beside me, he murmurs, "This family keeps me on my toes." I chuckle softly, resting my head against his shoulder. Wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 4. As I found myself stirring in the early hours of the morning, Dax was still asleep on my side of the bed, his soft breathing filling the quiet. Carefully, I spooned him, the warmth of his body grounding me. As I shifted, my hand brushed against his pocket. Curiosity piqued, I reached inside and felt the plug still there. A soft laugh escaped me as an idea formed. Slowly, carefully, I slipped it out and nudged his pants down just enough to reinsert it. He stirred slightly, letting out a quiet moan but not waking. I turned the vibration on low, watching as his breathing quickened. His body moved instinctively, arching toward me. My lips brushed the back of his neck as I whispered, "Sweet dreams, Dax." As we lie there, spooned closely, I let my hand trail down, gently wrapping around his length. He arches his back in response, pressing his ass firmly against me, and I can't help but giggle softly at his eagerness. Leaning in, I start kissing the back of his neck, my lips grazing his skin with slow, tender movements. My hand glides upward from his dick to his abdomen, then to his neck, drawing a shiver from him. His soft moans fill the air, growing louder as I tease him further. Before he gets too carried away, I gently slide 2 fingers into his mouth, and without hesitation, he begins to suck on them, his lips moving around them with a hunger that sends a shiver down my spine, his moans muffled but no less intoxicating. His body tightens beneath my touch, the tension building as he nears his release. Sensing he's right on the edge, I increase the vibration just enough to push him over. He lets out a shuddering gasp as he finishes, his body trembling against mine. Gently, I pull his pants back up and tuck the covers around us. Without a word, I settle beside him, closing my eyes with a small smile as sleep begins to take hold. The next morning, as the house stirred to life, Hayes leaned down and kissed me softly on the forehead before heading downstairs. "I'll make coffee. See you down there," he murmured before disappearing. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the sunlight creep through the curtains. Dax began to stir, his movements slow and groggy as he woke up. "Morning," he mumbled, his voice husky with sleep. "Morning," I replied, unable to hold back a giggle. "What?" he asked, still half asleep, his brow furrowing. "You need to shower," I teased, biting back a grin. "And change your clothes." "What's wrong with my clothes?" he muttered, shifting slightly. Then, all at once, his eyes widened as realization dawned. He felt it, the plug still snug in place. He turned to me, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "You," he stammered, his voice catching. I couldn't help but laugh, pointing toward his pants. "Looks like it wasn't just a dream, huh?" "Bells," he started, but his words faded into a frustrated groan. I stood, brushing my hair back as I prepared to leave the room. "I'll be waiting for you downstairs. I need coffee." Before I could take another step, his hand shot out, wrapping around mine. His gaze caught mine, smoldering with a mix of annoyance and something deeper, the frustration in his eyes just as palpable as the heat beneath it. "What's your schedule like today? Any chance we'll get even an hour alone at home?" I glance up from my phone, my lips curving into a wry smile, though there's a flicker of regret in my eyes. "Not likely. My schedule's pretty much synced with Timothy's. If I'm home, he's home." He lets out a slow exhale, his jaw tightening as he steps closer. When he speaks, his voice drops into a rough, intimate murmur. "Then get rid of him, Bella. Even just for an hour." I arch a brow at him, my teasing smile softening as I catch the raw edge in his tone. "Dax," he cuts me off, his hand brushing against mine, the brief contact electric. "I'm serious. I need you. And it's driving me insane. I want to bend you over the first surface I see and make you forget your own name." A shiver runs down my spine, and I feel my breath catch. His words are low, desperate, wrapping around me like a velvet caress. "Dax." My voice wavers, caught somewhere between amusement and something far deeper, as my gaze meets his. He cups my chin gently, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw, his touch achingly tender. His eyes burn with an intensity that sends my heart racing. "I mean it, Bella. I don't care about schedules or interruptions. I just need you, us. Even if it's just for a stolen moment." My resolve falters, and I find myself leaning into his touch. My hand drifts to his chest, resting lightly over the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "You're impossible, you know that?" His lips curve into a crooked grin, though his voice stays soft, infused with longing. "Only when it comes to you." I lean back slightly, narrowing my eyes at him, a mix of defiance and amusement playing on my face. But my pulse betrays me, quickening under the weight of his intense gaze. "What if your boyfriend comes back and catches you with me?" "Huh? What then?" His grin deepens, wicked and unapologetic, as he steps closer. His presence is overwhelming in the most maddening way. I doubt he'll be back so early. And even if he is. He leans in, his lips brushing against my ear, his voice dipping into a husky, almost dangerous whisper. He wouldn't be able to stop me. I swallow hard, my body instinctively leaning toward him, even as my voice sharpens with a faint edge. "You're playing a dangerous game, Dax." His hand finds my hip, his touch firm but reverent. He pulls back just enough to meet my eyes, his gaze piercing straight through me. "Maybe. But it's a game I'm willing to lose if it means having you." His voice softens, carrying a raw, undeniable need. "Especially after what you did to me yesterday." He trushes to my face, memories of yesterday flooding back. I try to steady myself, maintaining my composure even as my lips part for a retort that never comes. "You mean how I pressed them buttons on my phone? That's what this is about?" He laughs softly, the sound low and rough, as his fingers trail up my arm, leaving a path of warmth in their wake. "Oh, it's not just about that. It's about how you drive me insane, Bella." His tone darkens, his gaze locking onto mine with a quiet intensity. "How every time you smile at me, every time you bite your lip or brush past me like it's nothing, I feel like I'm coming undone. You know exactly what you're doing." His words hit me hard, and the tension between us is suffocating. My breath hitches, but I refuse to back down, lifting my chin with mock defiance. "And here I thought you liked being in control." He smirks, his hand sliding to the small of my back as he pulls me flush against him. "Not with you. With you, I want to lose it. Completely." My heart pounds, his words sinking in, the air between us electric. My resolve is slipping with every second that passes. "Dax," as he stands next to me, waiting for my answer, I glance up at him with a sweet, knowing look and nod. "Good girl," he murmurs, his voice low and warm, as he reaches out to pat my head. His touch lingers for a moment before he steps back, gripping the door handle. "I need to take a shower and change," he adds, his tone casual but his eyes still holding a trace of something deeper. "Don't I at least get a kiss?" I ask softly, tilting my head just enough to meet his gaze. A playful smile dances on my lips. "You know. For making you." "Finish?" For a moment, he pauses, considering, then steps back toward me. His hand brushes my hair aside as he leans down, pressing a firm, lingering kiss to my forehead. The gesture is tender, almost reverent, and when he pulls away, he doesn't say a word, just turns and leaves, the door clicking softly behind him. Chapter 5. As I pour myself a mug of coffee, the aroma wafting through the kitchen, Hayes watches me from the counter, his brow slightly furrowed. "Jake didn't come home last night?" he asks, his tone casual but with a tinge of concern. I shrug. "Number. Stayed at the office to plan something for Dax. It's all a surprise, so don't say anything to him. Jake texted me late last night, said he didn't want to risk waking anyone by coming home that late." Hayes nods, sipping his coffee. "Good on Jake, but you know how Dax is. He's sensitive, especially when it comes to feeling left out. Overdramatic is more like it," I mutter, taking a sip. "Honestly, I think Dax thrives on creating chaos when there's none. It's his natural state of being." Hayes chuckles. "Well, someone needs to keep you on your toes." He steps closer, brushing a hand along my arm. "But seriously, keep an eye on him, Bells. You know how he gets when he feels abandoned." I nod, but before I can reply, Dax strolls into the kitchen, freshly showered, his hair still damp and curling at the ends. He's wearing a loose shirt and low-slung joggers, looking casual yet undeniably attractive. "Good morning," he says, smirking at Hayes and me as if he's in on a secret. Hayes gives him a once-over, raising a brow. "You seem in better spirits today." Dax shoots me a subtle glance, and I have to stifle a laugh. If Hayes knew the half of it. "I slept well," Dax replies nonchalantly, pouring himself coffee. "Guess I needed it." Hayes's phone buzzes, and he checks it. "I need to head out earlier than planned. A quick meeting before the crew call. See you both tonight." He kisses my cheek, nods at Dax, and heads out the door. As soon as we hear the front door shut, Dax sets his coffee down and crosses the kitchen toward me. "Timothy and Eric are still sleeping, so it's just us here," he murmurs, his voice low and teasing. I lean back against the counter, eyeing him with mock suspicion. "What are you up to now?" He grins, placing his hands on either side of me, effectively caging me in. "Just to say a proper thank you for last night. You know, for that dream I had." I roll my eyes, but my heart races as his gaze drops to my lips. "You're insatiable." "Only for you," he whispers, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Before I can respond, his lips capture mine in a kiss that's both playful and demanding. His hands move to my waist, pulling me flush against him. "Dax," I murmur, pulling back slightly. What if Hayes forgot something and walks back in? He smirks, his thumb grazing my lower lip. Then I guess he'll find out how much his girlfriend loves to misbehave. I laugh, swatting at his chest. "You're impossible." "And you love it," he replies, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I push past him, grabbing my coffee and heading toward the stairs. I need to get ready for my day. "Don't you have anything productive to do?" He follows me, his voice trailing behind. "Oh, I have plenty of ideas, little sis. But I'll wait until you're ready to give me your undivided attention." Chapter 6. The morning air is crisp as Timothy and I step out of the car onto the studio lot, coffee cups in hand. The ride over had been a mix of him throwing out ridiculous impressions and me laughing so hard I nearly spilled my drink. "You know," he says, taking a dramatic sip of his coffee as we walk toward the trailers, "I've decided I'm officially the most talented person you know. And no, you can't argue. It's just a fact." I roll my eyes, smirking. "Oh, absolutely. I mean, who else do I know that can perfectly mimic a seagull choking on a fry?" "Hey," he protests, clutching his chest like I've wounded him. "That was art. You'll appreciate it someday." We pass through the bustling set, crew members rushing around with headsets and clipboards. Timothy's energy is infectious, even this early in the morning, and he's already bantering with anyone within earshot. As we reach the makeup trailer, he leans against the doorframe, giving me a mock serious look. "All right, big day. Don't embarrass me out there." "Embarrass you?" I shoot back, stepping inside. "I'm the one carrying this scene, Tim. You're just along for the ride." His laugh follows me as I settle into the makeup chair, the familiar hum of preparation filling the air. On set, the day unfolds with the usual rhythm of takes, retakes, and quick adjustments. Timothy and I slip easily into our characters, the banter and chemistry from earlier translating seamlessly into our scenes. Between takes, he's a whirlwind of jokes and suggestions, keeping the mood light even when the director's stress levels creep up. "You're hogging all the best angles," I tease during a short break, sipping from my water bottle. "Can't help it," he replies with a grin, leaning casually against a prop table. "The camera loves me." I chuckle, shaking my head. "You're cute, I'll give you that, but you're impossible. And yet, here you are, stuck with me." The final scene of my day wraps around 3 p.m. The director calls, cut, and praises the take before officially releasing me. "All right, you're good to go," he announces. I exhale in relief, stretching my arms as I step off set. Timothy follows me, still holding his script. "Lucky you," he says, his tone a mix of envy and teasing. "Done by 3. Meanwhile, I've got at least 2 more hours of this." I grin, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "Oh, poor Tim. I'll think of you while I'm at home, relaxing." He narrows his eyes at me, but there's no real heat behind it. "You know, you could stick around. Moral support and all that." "Tempting," I reply, tilting my head, "but I think I've earned my freedom today." He lets out an exaggerated sigh. "Fine, abandon me in my time of need. But don't think I won't remember this. I'll be sure to send you a postcard from my couch," I tease, stepping closer to give him a quick hug. "You'll survive, Tim." He smirks, though there's a glint of disappointment in his eyes. "Barely. Good luck," I say, starting to walk away. "Don't have too much fun without me," he calls after me, his voice carrying a playful edge. I wave over my shoulder as I head toward the car, leaving the buzz of the set behind. Chapter 7. Later, At home, the quiet feels almost luxurious as I sip on orange juice, scrolling through my phone. "I see you managed to ditch the kid," Dax remarks, his tone laced with a mix of playful mischief and simmering desire. "I didn't ditch him, Dax," I reply, taking a sip of my orange juice. "He is still on set. He had a few more scenes to film." Before I can say another word, Dax plucks the glass from my hand and sets it down on the counter with a decisive clink. "Then let's make the most of it," he murmurs, a wicked grin curving his lips. He grabs my waist and spins me effortlessly, positioning me so I'm bent over the cool surface of the kitchen bar stool. The suddenness of it all steals the breath from my lungs. "Dax," but my words trail off, caught in my throat, as I feel his hands tug at the waistband of my jeans. The fabric slides down my hips in one fluid motion, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. His touch follows, warm and deliberate, his fingers trailing up the sensitive skin of my thighs. "You're so wet," he mutters, his voice low and rough with need as his hand ventures higher, finding the heat between my legs. With his other hand he unbuttons his pants and pulls out his dick, placing it on my ass. His fingers find my mouth and he trace my lips, slipping into my mouth as I instinctively part them, letting him slide 2 fingers in. I close my lips around them, swirling my tongue with deliberate movements, tasting the saltiness of his skin. His breath hitches, and I feel the shift in his energy, the restrained intensity simmering just beneath the surface. "Good girl," he murmurs, his voice low and rough. I glance over my shoulder, catching the way his eyes darken with hunger. He holds my gaze, a smile playing at his lips, devastating and wicked all at once. "Now tell me," he says, his words dragging as if he's savoring the moment, "where would you like me?" He smirks, "Should I put it in your very wet pussy or can I put it in your ass?" I don't reply, I just arch myself up towards him. The question hangs in the air as he pushes 2 fingers inside me, the slow, deliberate pressure drawing a sharp gasp from my lips. My hips move instinctively, meeting him halfway, and his smirk deepens. "Here," he murmurs, curling his fingers inside me, "or somewhere else?" His free hand settles on my hip, grounding me against him, as he drags his fingers out, leaving a hollow ache in their wake. I don't answer, unable to form words as my body arches toward him, begging for more. He chuckles softly, a low, rumbling sound that reverberates through me. "I think you like it when I make the choices," he teases, his voice a dangerous, velvety drawl. His hand shifts, tracing slow, teasing circles over me, his fingers slipping lower until they press against that sensitive place, testing, probing. The air feels electric, every nerve ending alive under his touch. He leans over, his body pressing against mine as he whispers into my ear. "How many do you think you can handle?" I shiver at the question, heat rushing through me as his fingers explore with agonizing patience. His other hand grips me firmly, spreading me open as if to claim every part of me. "You're so damn perfect like this," he breathes, and I can hear the strain in his voice, the barely checked control. His hand slides between my thighs, his fingers slick as they trail upward, spreading the warmth across my skin. When he positions himself, the weight of him between my legs, the anticipation coils tight in my chest. He presses forward, not entering but tormenting, the slow glide of him against me sending jolts of sensation through my body. His hands hold me steady, firm but reverent, as if he's balancing on the edge of restraint and want. "Dax," I manage, my voice trembling with need. "Say it again." "I'm not going to indulge you," I reply, teasing him. Dax's hands moved with deliberate care, his touch lingering in a way that felt both exploratory and intentional. His fingers traced along the sensitive curve of my lower back and the fullness of my hips, eventually settling lower, where his touch grew more focused. Gently, he spread me apart, his movements unhurried and almost reverent, as though he sought to ensure my comfort above all else. With soft pressure, he began to circle and tease, his fingers testing and coaxing until I instinctively relaxed beneath him. Taking my response as an invitation, he eased one finger in with slow, careful precision, pausing to let me adjust to the sensation. His other hand remained steady on my hip, grounding me and silently reassuring me. When he felt me relax further, he introduced a second finger, his movements deliberate and measured. He worked with a practiced gentleness, each motion coaxing a new wave of sensation, his touch attentive and deeply intimate. It wasn't rushed or forceful but filled with a care that made me feel seen, cherished, and entirely his. Dax. I moan. He lets out a low laugh. You were saying. More, Dax, I whisper, my voice trembling with need. I want more. He stops abruptly, his hands firm as he pulls me back against his chest. His touch becomes deliberate, sliding over my skin, his fingers finding their way to my breasts, caressing them with an intoxicating mix of tenderness and urgency. One hand drifts upward, his palm grazing my neck, and I instinctively lean into him, the heat of his presence grounding me. Turning my head slightly, I meet his eyes for a fleeting moment before his hand lingers at my throat, and his lips crash against mine in a desperate, consuming kiss. His fingers press against my neck, firm yet careful, as though he's trying to draw me impossibly closer, while his other hand continues to knead my breast with unrelenting fervor. His breath is warm and uneven, and when he finally pulls back just enough to whisper, his voice is low and rough, a plea wrapped in desire. I want to feel you so much, he murmurs, his words brushing against my skin, the tension palpable between us. I can feel him pulsing between my legs. I shiver at the sensation, the ache building inside me. I want you, Dax, I breathe, the words almost trembling. Now, please. He guides me backward, his hands steady yet urgent, bending me once more over the chair. The cool surface against my skin contrasts with the heat radiating between us. He doesn't speak, instead, his actions convey everything, the silence charged with anticipation and unspoken need. I could feel the hard warmth of him pressing intimately between my cheeks, the tension in his movements betraying his restraint. After toying and teasing my asshole with his fingers, he reaches over the counter and grabs the olive oil bottle next to the stove. He pours a generous amount between my cheeks and continues to rub against the rim with his fingers. He pours more oil on his hand and massages it all over his dick and starts toying with it over my cheeks and in between. He glides his thumb into me again and traces circles as if trying to enlarge it. I let out a moan as his head penetrates my hole. He's big, I know he is. He doesn't stop there, he pulls my ass apart using both his hands and with a powerful thrust he slides it all in. I moan even harder as if just adjusting to him for the first time. It hurts, I'll admit that, but the pain will subside once I get used to him again. He starts by moving slowly, he knows all too well I need a moment before I can truly enjoy him. And to make things easier for me he slides his hand between my legs and starts tracing lines along my clit with increasing his thrusts. As I get used to his size and start enjoying it I arch my ass up, more into him. He grabs it and pulls me in closer, shoving his dick further in. Good girl, take it all in. He starts pounding harder and harder, pushing it deeper inside. Don't stop, I tell him. More aroused by my words, by my constant moans, he grabs me even harder. He keeps one hand on my ass while he moves the other to have access between my legs. His fingers find my pussy and they go in and out with rapid movement, using his thumb to rub my clit. I let out another moan, louder this time. He moans even harder and I can feel his dick pulsing inside me. He is close and knowing that, feeling that sends me over the edge. I arch more and he lets out a guttural sound. He thrusts one more and I can feel his dick pounding relentlessly inside me, filling me. He pushes his fingers deeper inside and I too come undone. Dax. Feeling the shivers coursing through me, knowing me all so well, he leans down and presses a tender kiss to the back of my neck, his lips lingering as though savoring the moment. Slowly, he helps me to my feet, steadying me with a gentleness that contrasts the passion of moments ago. Turning me to face him, his hands frame my face, thumbs brushing softly over my cheeks. His eyes search mine, glowing with an intensity that steals my breath. He rests his forehead against mine, his touch grounding yet electric. "You are so beautiful when I make you come undone, breathtaking," he murmurs, his voice low and brimming with awe. A smile tugs at my lips, unbidden yet impossible to suppress. This attraction, the pull between us, the undeniable connection, it's always been there, growing steadily over more than a decade. Though our beginning was far from smooth, the first 2 weeks spent barely tolerating each other, time shifted something between us. Slowly, we grew closer, layers peeling back to reveal the vulnerabilities beneath his cold exterior. I remember the night he first confided in me, the pain in his voice as he spoke of the abuse he endured as a child, the weight of his guarded nature laid bare. It was then I began to understand him, to see the man beneath the armor. From that moment, we've been bound in ways that transcended labels. Attraction was always part of it, an unspoken heat that flickered whenever we were near, but not necessarily as a couple. Over the years, we've been drawn to each other, sometimes as solace, sometimes simply for the thrill of sharing a fleeting, unguarded moment. Now, in this moment, that connection feels deeper than ever, as if the years of shared history have all led to this. "I love you," he whispers, the words a quiet confession that feels like a vow. "And I love you," I reply, my voice steady but heavy with meaning. Dax smiles warmly, his lips pressing softly against mine in a gentle kiss. "Should we take this upstairs?" he asks, his voice low and teasing. Before I can even respond, he's already lifting me effortlessly, carrying me toward his bedroom. Chapter 8. He places me on the bed with a tender touch, his hands brushing against my skin as he lowers me gently. "Now, let's do this properly," he murmurs, his lips tracing the path of my exposed skin. His kisses are slow and deliberate, igniting a warmth that spreads through me as he begins to remove my clothes, piece by piece. When we're both finally bare, he pulls me closer to the edge of the bed, his eyes locking with mine. He kneels in front of me, his hands resting lightly on the mattress, as he gives me a smile full of anticipation. He gently lifts up my ass, placing a pillow beneath me, his gaze lingering on mine with a quiet, knowing smile. "Will you let me eat you up?" he asks me, although his face is already between my legs, his voice low and soft, his breath warm against my skin as he draws closer. I can feel every word he said vibrate over my clit. "Please do," I whisper, my body responding to the intensity of his presence, a shiver running through me at the thought of what comes next. Dax's hands traced my thighs, his fingertips barely brushing against my skin, sending shivers cascading down my spine. He was deliberate, almost teasing, as if savoring the anticipation that hung thick in the air. His is warm against me, soft puffs that contrasted with the coolness of the room. He leaned in, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of my inner thigh, so feather-light it could have been a whisper. His tongue followed, a slow, languid glide that left a trail of heat in its wake. Every motion was deliberate, each touch imbued with a kind of reverence that made my pulse race. As he kissed his way higher, his pace slowed even further, as though he was in no rush to reach his destination. He lingered on the tender skin, his tongue circling and tracing shapes, the gentlest flicks alternating with firmer strokes that made my breath hitch. His grip on my thighs tightened, anchoring me as his mouth worked its magic, the sensations a blend of tenderness and intensity. The way he explored felt like he was memorizing every inch of me, each caress sending ripples of warmth coursing through my body. "Dax," I breathed, my voice unsteady, as he paused to meet my gaze for just a moment, his eyes dark with focus and intent. The corner of his mouth quirked in the faintest of smiles before he returned to his task, his lips pressing a kiss that was as much a promise as it was a touch. He moved with a kind of artistry, using the flat of his tongue one moment, then the tip the next, alternating pressure and pace to keep me on edge. His attention was unwavering, his focus making it impossible to think about anything but the way he was making me feel, cherished, desired, and utterly undone. "You are the rarest and wildest flower I've ever met, Bella. And this, me, you'll always have it." The raw vulnerability in his eyes undid me once again. I reached up, brushing a stray strand of hair from his face. "And you'll always have me, Dax. Always." His lips find mine, and the kiss is anything but ordinary. It's raw, fervent, brimming with unspoken emotions neither of us dares to name. As his mouth claims mine, he eases me back onto the pillow, the weight of his body pressing into me, grounding me and setting me alight all at once. He lifts my ass gently up from the pillow and pushes his thumb in with one swift move. I gasp softly, caught between the intensity of the moment and the heat in his gaze as he looks down at me. There's something vulnerable there, just for a fleeting second, a crack in the mask he so carefully wears. Dax was never one to show his emotions outright, always quick to deflect, to smirk, or to tease when the cracks began to show. But now, his eyes linger on mine, and I can't help but smile at the fleeting vulnerability he's letting me see. It's rare, almost sacred, and though he might try to brush it off in the next moment, I hold on to it tightly, silently treasuring what he rarely allows anyone else to witness. Just as he's about to replace his thumb with something much thicker, the unmistakable sound of the door unlocking pierces the air, freezing us both in place. "Shit," he mutters, his forehead dropping to my shoulder for the briefest moment before we both scramble into action, grabbing clothes in a mad dash to cover ourselves. We dress quickly, barely able to contain our laughter as the situation sinks in. The absurdity of the interruption makes it all the more ridiculous. He pulls his shirt on haphazardly and glances at me, his grin devilish. "To be continued," he whispers, his tone low and promising, sending a thrill down my spine despite the abrupt end to our moment. I can't help but giggle, shaking my head as he winks and saunters toward the door as if nothing had happened, leaving me flushed, flustered, and aching for what comes next. As we open the door to his bedroom, we see Jake downstairs, arms crossed, his expression caught somewhere between amused and exasperated. I almost glide down the stairs, my excitement taking over as I wrap my arms around him. Jake greets me warmly, but his gaze doesn't waver from the figure lingering in the doorway behind me. "Aren't you going to give me a hug? Or dare I say, a kiss?" Jake teases, his voice light but laced with a hint of challenge as his eyes lock on Dax. Dax, still in the doorway, doesn't reply. His face is a storm of emotions he's not ready to address. Instead, he huffs, mutters something under his breath, and turns sharply, slamming the door behind him. Jake raises an eyebrow, his smirk unfazed. "Still mad, huh?" I sigh, shaking my head as we make our way to the kitchen. "He's not mad, Jake. He's upset you didn't come home last night." Jake grabs a glass from the cupboard, his movements purposeful but measured. "I was planning his surprise, a trip to Paris." "You know that." "I know," I reply, leaning against the counter, but he doesn't. "And before you can act on that grand gesture, you might want to get on his grumpiness's good side. Otherwise, you won't get him out of his room, let alone the house." Jake chuckles, running a hand through his hair. "Wish me luck." "Good luck," I call out with a laugh as I head to the living room, plopping onto the couch to turn on the TV. The sound of his footsteps ascending the stairs fades, leaving me wondering just how he plans to charm his way back into Dax's good graces. Chapter 9. As I settle comfortably on the couch, flicking through channels with little care, the door unlocks again. I glance toward it, half expecting more drama, and there stands Timothy, hair windswept, cheeks slightly flushed from the cold outside. "Welcome back, kid," I call out from the couch, barely looking up from the TV. He kicks off his boots by the door, his movements lazy but deliberate. "What are we watching? And more importantly, can we order pizza?" "I'm starving," he asks, walking over and flopping down next to me. "Pizza sounds good," I agree, leaning forward to grab my phone. "Let's order first, then we can decide on a movie," he adds. "Your endless hunger can't wait, I take it?" He grins, his eyes lighting up with boyish charm. "Exactly. Extra toppings too. We should get enough for the guys, just in case." "Always the considerate one," I tease, dialing the number. Once the pizza is ordered, 3 larges with a ridiculous variety of toppings, we start scrolling through the never-ending sea of movie options, tossing out suggestions and vetoing each other at every turn. Action? He suggests, leaning back against the couch. Too predictable. How about a comedy? Not in the mood to laugh. Horror? I'd rather not have nightmares, thanks. Our playful banter is cut short by a sudden, thunderous boom from upstairs, followed by what sounds like a crash. We both freeze, exchanging wide-eyed looks. What the hell was that? Timothy asks, already halfway to his feet. No idea, but I'm guessing it's coming from upstairs, I reply, standing as well. Another loud thud echoes through the house, followed by muffled moaning that leaves little to the imagination. Timothy arches an eyebrow at me, and I can't help but groan. And that's how they reconcile, by fucking each other senseless, I say, throwing my hands up in mock exasperation. Timothy chuckles as we both sink back onto the couch. Let's hope they stick to Dax's room this time, I mutter, leaning back and crossing my arms. He smirks. Yeah, let's hope so. You nearly cried last time when they destroyed your library. His tone softens as he reaches out, his fingers brushing gently against my cheek. I don't want to see you cry again. I blink, taken aback by the tenderness in his touch. Thanks, Tim, I say quietly, smiling up at him. He smiles back, his gaze lingering. Then, without warning, he leans in and presses a soft, almost tentative kiss to my lips. I pull back slightly, my heart fluttering with surprise. What was that for? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Just because, he replies, his cheeks tinged with a faint blush. I laugh softly. I take it the 3 hours of us kissing each other on set earlier weren't enough for you? Never, he says with a cheeky grin before leaning in again, this time capturing my lips in a deeper kiss. His tongue teases mine, the taste of him familiar yet exciting. I pull away reluctantly, resting my forehead against his. Timmy. We're not on set, and we're definitely not alone in the house. He looks at me sheepishly, his hand falling to his lap. I know. I'm sorry. I just couldn't help it. I shake my head with a small smile and kiss him again, fierce but fleeting. Don't be sorry, kiddo. He wraps an arm around my shoulders, pulling me closer as I nestle into his side. My head rests on his chest, and his chin brushes lightly against my hair. The sound of another crash from upstairs followed by muffled laughter makes us both laugh quietly. I just hope they don't break the bed, I murmur. Or the dresser, he adds with a chuckle. As the credits roll on the movie we finally settled on, we sit there in companionable silence, waiting eagerly for the pizza and hoping, for the sake of the furniture, that Dax and Jake's reunion doesn't leave too much destruction in its wake. The scent of melted cheese and garlic wafted through the air as I set the pizza boxes on the coffee table. Timothy was already unstacking plates, handing them to me one by one with an air of mock seriousness, like he was doing something heroic. Careful now, we're feeding the beasts tonight, I joked, hearing the unmistakable sound of footsteps descending the stairs. As if on cue, Dax and Jake appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled and expressions suspiciously smug. Jake has a faint pink tint on his usually flawless cheekbones, and Dax avoided looking directly at me as he straightened his shirt. Perfect timing, I said, smirking as I waved a slice of pizza in the air. You've worked up an appetite, I assume? Jake shot me a grin, unabashed as always. Oh, absolutely. Reconciliation burns a lot of calories. Dax rolled his eyes but said nothing, heading straight for the couch and flopping down next to Timothy, who handed him a plate without a word. You're welcome, by the way, I teased, nudging Jack as he slid onto the armchair. You'd better not have broken anything this time. Jake placed a hand over his heart, feigning innocence. Of course not. We're considerate housemates. Timothy snorted. Sure you are. Tell that to the remains of the lamp you destroyed last month. Jake chuckled, unabashedly, while Dax muttered under his breath, it wasn't the lamp. It was the bookshelf. And it's fine, I fixed it. Oh, you fixed it, did you? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Funny, I don't recall seeing you anywhere near a toolbox. Fine, I supervised, Dax grumbled, grabbing a slice of pizza and shoving it into his mouth to end the discussion. Light chatter filled the room as we dug into the pizzas. Jake leaned forward, pointing at the screen. "So, what are we watching?" "Something we randomly picked while you two were occupied," I replied, trying not to laugh. "But don't worry, it's terrible." Jake leaned back, taking a bite of his pizza. "Perfect? Terrible movies are my specialty." "What is it, aliens, bad romance, or something involving a shark?" "All three," Timothy deadpanned, which earned a chorus of laughter. For a moment, the room was warm and easy, filled with the kind of banter that only comes from knowing each other too well. Jake and Dax shared a brief look, something private passing between them, before Jake turned to me with a sly grin. "So, did you enjoy our little show earlier?" he teased. "Don't flatter yourself," I shot back, trying to hide my amusement. It was hard not to notice with all the banging and crashing. "Banging and crashing," Dax repeated, shaking his head as he reached for another slice. Timothy leaned closer to me, his voice a low whisper meant only for me. "He is so grumpy. How does Jake even handle him?" "Patience," I whispered back. "And probably bribery." Jake caught us whispering and narrowed his eyes. "What are you two conspiring about over there?" "Nothing." Timothy and I replied in unison, a little too quickly. The room burst into laughter again, and even Dax cracked a small, reluctant smile. It was moments like these that reminded me why I loved this makeshift family of ours. We weren't perfect, far from it, but we fit together in our own chaotic, wonderful way. As the movie played on, and the pizza boxes emptied, Jake threw an arm around Dax, pulling him closer despite his protests. Timothy leaned into me, his warmth a comforting presence as his fingers absent-mindedly played with the ends of my hair. Chapter 10. For a while, we simply existed together, the outside world forgotten as we basked in the simple joy of being a part of each other's lives. I got up from the couch, stretching slightly before asking, "Anyone want something to drink?" My tone was casual, but my eyes flickered over to Dax, who had been quieter than usual since we all sat down. "I'll help," he said, standing up abruptly. I arched an eyebrow at him. "I'm pretty sure I can carry a few drinks on my own." "Yeah, but you shouldn't have to," he replied, his voice a little too eager. It wasn't like Dax to offer help so willingly, he always liked to tease me about being independent. As we walked into the kitchen, he followed silently, his footsteps deliberate but hesitant. Something was definitely on his mind. I turned around, leaning against the counter. "All right. What's going on?" He met my gaze, hesitating for a moment before stepping closer and pulling me into a tight embrace. His arms wrapped around me with an intensity that almost took my breath away. "Dax?" I asked softly, my voice muffled against his chest. He didn't reply immediately, just held me like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost pained. "I'm sorry." "For what?" I pulled back slightly to look at him, confused by the sudden apology. "For not finishing what we started earlier," he admitted, his eyes searching mine. I couldn't help but smile, shaking my head. "Don't be. It happens. I'll make it up to you," he promised, his voice firm despite the vulnerability in his expression. "You don't have to, but I know you will," I teased gently, reaching up to tuck a stray strand of hair behind his ear. It was such a small gesture, but it seemed to ground him somehow. He leaned down, pressing a lingering kiss to my forehead. It wasn't rushed or fleeting, it was full of unspoken emotions. "You sweet, sweet man," I whisper, my voice barely audible as I gently caressed Dax's cheek, letting my fingertips linger against the warmth of his skin. His eyes soften, and for a fleeting moment, the weight he carries seems to lift, replaced by something unspoken, something only we share. "You're the only one who sees me whole," he murmurs, his voice carrying a raw honesty that stirs something deep inside me. He leans into my touch, seeking comfort, and places a tender kiss on the palm of my hand. His lips linger there, as if trying to soak in the reassurance I'm offering him. "Jake is trying, you know." I say softly, breaking the silence but keeping my tone gentle. Careful. If you let him. He closes his eyes, exhaling a breath that seems to carry 1,000 unspoken words. I know. It's just. His voice falters, the vulnerability threading through his words making my heart ache for him. There's concern, hesitation, and a fear that he can't quite mask. You're not ready yet, I say, my voice steady as I bring my other hand up to cup his face. My thumbs trace the angles of his jaw, grounding both of us in this moment. Not ready for your walls to completely shatter, and that's okay. It's okay, Dax. His eyes flutter open, and when our gazes lock, the world around us seems to fall away. There's an unspoken understanding between us, a fragile yet powerful connection. I can see the flicker of hope mingling with the fear in his eyes, and it strengthens my resolve to be his anchor. You don't have to face it all at once, I continue, my voice a quiet promise. I'll be here, whenever you're ready. Dax's hands come up, gently covering mine as they cradle his face. You always know what to say, he murmurs, his lips curving into the faintest smile, though his eyes are glassy with emotions he's fighting to keep at bay. It's because I see you, I reply simply, and the truth of it seems to settle over us both, filling the space between us with a sense of peace. Let's get these drinks to the other room before they think we've disappeared, he said after a moment, his voice lighter now. How about one more hug before we head back? He added, pulling me into another embrace before I could even answer. I laughed softly and hugged him back, trying to match his intensity. You're going to crush me, I joked, which earned me a quiet chuckle. When we finally returned to the living room, the atmosphere had shifted slightly. Timothy had taken up more space on the couch, stretching out comfortably with a casual grin as we walked in. I handed Jake a soda and returned to the couch, where Timothy immediately put his arm over my shoulder, pulling me closer. I leaned into him instinctively, enjoying the warmth of his casual affection. But then I felt it, a heavy, burning gaze. I glanced up to see Dax staring at us, his expression unreadable. His silence was more deafening than any words he could have said. You two look awfully cozy now, Dax said finally, his tone laced with something sharp. I straightened, giving him a sharp look. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged, but his eyes never left Timothy. Nothing. Just an observation. Tim cleared his throat, clearly sensing the tension. I didn't realize being close was against house rules. Dax's gaze narrowed. I stood, my hands on my hips. Dax, what is wrong with you? Nothing, he snapped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Forget it. No, I'm not forgetting it. You don't get to throw around comments like that and then pretend it's nothing. Jake, who had been quietly observing the exchange, set his drink down with a sigh. All right, Dax. Maybe we should call it an early night. Dax hesitated, his eyes flicking between me and Timothy. The room was thick with tension, every second dragging out longer than the last. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I don't want things to change, all right? Change? I repeated, softening slightly. Dax looked up at me, his eyes softer now but still filled with unspoken emotions. I just don't want to lose what we have, that's all. You're my brother, Dax, and I love you. No one would ever replace you. Dax let out a small laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. All right. I'm being stupid, aren't I? A little, I teased, earning a playful glare from him. Timothy smiled, leaning back into the couch. Now that we've cleared the air, can we get back to the pizza before it gets cold? Good idea, Jake agreed, grabbing another slice. Dax sat down beside me, nudging me lightly with his shoulder. Thanks, he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear it. Anytime, I whispered back, giving him a soft smile that I hoped conveyed everything I didn't say out loud. Without thinking much, I leaned into him, resting my head lightly against his shoulder. He stiffened for just a moment, probably surprised, but then relaxed, his presence warm and comforting. I reached over, grabbing his arm and gently tugging it until it draped over my shoulder. "There," I said with a playful grin. "Now you're officially my movie-watching partner, pillow, and personal space heater." Dax chuckled, the sound rumbling softly in his chest. "Oh, so I'm just furniture now?" "Not just furniture," I teased, giving him an exaggerated look. "You're deluxe furniture, premium, even. Be honored." He laughed again, shaking his head. "You're lucky I like you." "Lucky? Please, I'm irresistible," I shot back with a smirk, settling further into his side. He sighed dramatically, but I caught the way his arm tightened just a bit around me, holding me closer. "All right, fine. But if I fall asleep, you're stuck with me." "Deal," I said, tilting my head to give him a cheeky grin. As the movie played on, the banter faded into a comfortable silence. With Dax's steady warmth beside me, I couldn't help but feel that everything was just as it should be. Chapter 11. The sound of the door unlocking pulled everyone's attention from the movie. Before anyone could react, Hayes strode in with his usual confident energy, and behind him came Lou, his presence instantly filling the room. "Lou!" I shouted, springing to my feet. Without hesitation, I ran to Hayes, planting a quick kiss on his lips before launching myself into Lou's arms. "You're back." He caught me with a laugh, wrapping me in a tight hug. "Miss me much?" "Are you kidding? It's been over a month." I practically scolded, squeezing him tighter before finally stepping back. Dax leaned back on the couch, crossing his arms with a smirk. Well, the prodigal brother returns," he teased, his tone playful but carrying a hint of sincerity. "Welcome back, stranger. Glad to see you in one piece." "Thanks, man," Lou replied, grinning as he turned to face Dax. "You didn't redecorate my bedroom while I was gone, did you?" "Redecorate?" Dax said with mock offense. "What do you take me for?" "Of course not. Though. If you find a new set of pink curtains, don't blame me." Lou laughed, shaking his head. "I wouldn't put it past you." As the teasing subsided, the four of us moved into the living room, the familiar comfort of the space heightened by Lou's return. Hayes sank into one of the armchairs, looking effortlessly at ease. I wasted no time climbing into his lap, curling up as if I belonged there, which, of course, I did. Dax raised an eyebrow, a mischievous grin tugging at his lips. "Wow, comfy much? Jealous?" I shot back, sticking my tongue out at him. "Hardly," Dax replied, leaning back and throwing an arm over the back of the couch. "But if I hear the chair creak under you too, I'm charging you for a replacement." Hayes chuckled, resting a hand on my knee and squeezing gently. "Don't worry, Dax. I'll take full responsibility if the furniture suffers." "Damn right you will," Dax quipped, but his eyes held a glimmer of amusement. It was clear that, despite the snark, there was an unspoken respect and care between them. Lou plopped onto the couch beside Dax, stretching out comfortably. "So," he began, looking around the room, "what's the plan? Catching me up on what I missed, or is this just movie night as usual?" "Movie night, obviously," I replied, smiling brightly. "But we can turn it into a Lou appreciation night if you want. I'll even let you pick the movie." "Generous," Lou said with a grin. "But no thanks, I'd rather suffer through whatever Dax and Timmy argued over earlier." Dax rolled his eyes. "It wasn't an argument, it was a spirited debate." "Sure," Lou drawled, leaning back with a chuckle. The warmth in the room was palpable as we all settled in, laughter and light-hearted banter flowing easily. With Lou back, it felt like the family was whole again, and I couldn't help but feel that everything was just a little bit brighter. Hayes's arms wrapped around me tightly as he nuzzled my neck, his breath warm against my skin. He whispered something soft, just for me, his voice low and teasing. I felt a shiver run through me as his presence became more tangible, his strength and warmth wrapping me in a cocoon. Beneath me, I could feel him stirring, a subtle but unmistakable indication of the effect I had on him. "We'll call it a night, guys," I announced, standing up as casually as I could manage. Hayes followed close behind, his arms still securely around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder, and I could feel the subtle brush of his stubble against my cheek. "I'm glad to have you back, Lou," I said warmly, leaning over to press a soft kiss to his cheek. "I really missed you around. See you at coffee tomorrow morning. You need to tell me everything, in great detail." Lou's grin was lopsided, touched with affection. "Don't be late," he quipped. Just as Hayes and I were about to head upstairs, Dax's voice rang out. "Keep it down, guys." I burst out laughing, my head tilting back against Hayes's chest. "Just like you did with Jake, right?" I called back, a cheeky edge in my tone. The silence that followed was deafening and utterly victorious. I smirked. "That's what I thought." Hayes chuckled softly, his breath warm against my ear. "You're wicked, you know that?" "Only when provoked," I replied, a teasing glint in my eyes as I turned to him. As soon as we stepped into the bedroom and the door clicked shut behind us, Hayes's demeanor shifted. His arms tightened around me, and before I could say another word, he lifted me effortlessly. My legs wrapped instinctively around his waist, and I could feel the strength of his hold as he pulled me closer. His lips found mine, and the kiss was instant, fiery, and intense. There was nothing hurried about it, though. It was deliberate, as if he wanted to savor every second. His lips moved against mine with a maddening precision, soft yet commanding, drawing out every ounce of tension that had built between us throughout the evening. My fingers tangled in his hair, tugging slightly as I deepened the kiss, eliciting a low, satisfied hum from him. His hands roamed, one firm against the small of my back while the other cradled the side of my neck, his thumb brushing softly over my jawline. It was a stark contrast to the urgency of his kiss, a delicate balance of strength and tenderness that left me breathless. As he carried me further into the room, his movements were fluid, his focus entirely on me. He pressed me gently against the wall, and the cool surface sent a shiver through me that only intensified the heat between us. His lips trailed from my mouth to my jaw, then down to the curve of my neck, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. "Hayes," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. I tilted my head to give him better access, my hands tightening on his shoulders as his mouth worked its magic. "You have no idea how much I missed this," he murmured against my skin, his voice low and rough. I smiled, my fingers trailing down to trace the line of his jaw. "I might have an idea," I teased, my own voice unsteady as he pressed another lingering kiss just below my ear. He pulled back slightly, just enough to look into my eyes. His gaze was intense, filled with an affection so deep it left me feeling exposed in the best way. "I love you," he said simply, as if the words themselves weren't enough to convey the depth of his feelings. I cupped his face, my thumb brushing lightly over his cheekbone. "I love you too," I replied, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. His smile was soft but smoldering, and before I could say anything else, he captured my lips again, this time slower, more measured. Each kiss felt like a silent promise, a testament to everything we shared and everything we were building together. Eventually, he carried me to the bed, his movements careful and deliberate as he laid me down gently. He hovered over me for a moment, his hand brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice full of awe. I reached up, pulling him down for another kiss. "And you're mine," I murmured against his lips, feeling the truth of the words settle deep within me. His lips moved to the hollow of my throat, lingering just long enough to leave a faint impression before returning to my mouth. "You're not very quiet, you know," he teased, his voice a low rumble against my skin. I arched into his touch, a soft laugh escaping before I bit my lip to stifle it. "You're not exactly helping." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his dark eyes glittering with amusement and heat. "Should I stop then?" His tone was mock serious, but the way his hands lingered at my hips said otherwise. "Don't you dare," I whispered, tugging him back down into another kiss, threading my fingers through his hair as he pressed against me. Time felt suspended as his touch became more deliberate, his fingers trailing patterns across my skin that left goosebumps in their wake. He was taking his time, exploring every inch with a reverence that made my chest tighten. "Hayes," I murmured, his name a plea and a promise as he shifted slightly to kiss the curve of my shoulder. He responded, the sound vibrating against my skin as his lips moved lower. I tilted my head back, my breathing uneven as I tried to form a coherent thought. You're too good at this. He chuckled softly, the sound filled with quiet confidence. I'll take that as a compliment. We moved together, a mix of soft whispers and stolen touches that grew in intensity until we were both breathless, tangled in each other and the sheets. It was a dance between passion and restraint, an unspoken agreement to savor every moment while keeping our shared world undisturbed. When we finally stilled, his forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling in the quiet. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his thumb lingering on my cheek as his gaze held mine. I could stay like this forever, he said softly, his voice raw with sincerity. As the night stretched on, every touch, every kiss, every whispered word felt like a revelation, a reminder of the connection we shared. It wasn't just passion, it was love, deep and unyielding, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Insight. Dax has always been open-minded. His curiosity and his willingness to explore never allowed him to confine himself to labels. After a party, it didn't matter much whether he woke up next to a she or a he, it was the connection, the moment, the rawness of it all that mattered. But Jake was different. He wasn't just another fleeting encounter or a name in Dax's Rolodex of lovers. He was his first boyfriend, a milestone Dax hadn't anticipated after a string of failed relationships with women who never quite managed to keep up with his chaotic brilliance. Their relationship began during the filming of Naked Emotion, a tempestuous project that left all of us emotionally exposed. The film, a portrayal of two artists who had survived the trauma of childhood abuse, found a catharsis in each other. Watching Dax and Jake immerse themselves in their roles was a thing of raw beauty, as visceral as it was heartbreaking. There was no pretense, no distance. It was as though they bled on screen, and that blood soaked into the fabric of our lives. The performances were a gift, yet for me, they were also a wound, one I wasn't sure I could ever fully heal from. I knew their stories off-screen, and the film made it too real, too close. The art was breathtaking, yes, but it left me aching inside. Watching Dax and Jake immerse themselves in their roles was a thing of raw beauty, as visceral as it was devastating. It wasn't just acting, it was bleeding on screen, pouring their souls into every frame. The result was a masterpiece, a film heralded as an unflinching exploration of pain and love. But for me, it was nearly unbearable to watch. Knowing their stories, the ones that weren't part of the script, made every scene feel like a knife to the heart. Even sitting through the premiere was a struggle, and I don't think I'll ever bring myself to watch it again. It was too real, too close. My part, narrating their lives through sobs and choreographed dances, felt like exposing every wound to the world. It was beautiful, yes, but devastating. Then there was Jack's arrival into our lives. It wasn't just Naked Emotion that brought him closer, it was a collision of circumstances that none of us could have anticipated. Jake had shown up during one of the darkest times, when Lou, our closest friend, was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life after a gunshot wound. Jake was summoned by his stepmother, the woman who had cast him out years ago, to donate part of his liver to her son, Jake's stepbrother. The audacity of the request was staggering. But what struck me most was Jake's courage, the way he found the strength to say no, to reclaim his agency in the face of the very person who had once made him feel worthless. It wasn't a decision he made alone. Dax, Lou, and I stood by him, supporting him every step of the way. That moment, shared between the four of us, felt like a turning point. In the days that followed, Jake opened up to us, sharing his story, his struggles, his fears, and the moments that had shaped him. In turn, we shared ours. The bond that formed between us wasn't instant, but it was real. Jake was drawn to art, much like Dax, and the two of them connected over their shared passions. Their conversations were electric, brimming with creativity and mutual understanding. Before long, Jake moved in with us, becoming a part of our ever-growing, unconventional family. It wasn't just about convenience or proximity, it was about belonging, about finding a place where he didn't have to explain or justify himself. Jake found a home with us, just as we found a kindred spirit in him. And then there's Timothy, who entered our lives with far less drama, at least at first. He was a surprise, a package delivered by my manager alongside news of my next project. I'd been told he would be moving in with us to prepare for the role, and though I bristled at the idea of sharing my space, I couldn't deny the impact he had on all of us. At first, I felt like a glorified babysitter, tasked with helping him tap into emotions he struggled to express. But as time went on, Tim opened up in ways none of us expected. He became a part of the rhythm of our lives, his presence a catalyst for change and growth. And through it all, there was Dax and me. Our connection has always been complicated. Once a year, maybe twice if fate allowed, we'd find ourselves drawn together. It wasn't a relationship, not in the traditional sense. But it was ours, a bond neither of us seemed willing, or able, to let go of. And then Tim came along, and everything shifted. Dax, always confident and unapologetically himself, became clingy, territorial in ways that surprised even me. I saw it in the way he looked at Tim, the sharp remarks he made when he thought no one was paying attention. Dax would never admit it, but he hated sharing. And yet, for all his contradictions, for all his complexities, Dax remains one of the few constants in my life, a storm I've learned not just to endure, but to crave.